Dr. Seymour Gittin, the director of the Albright Institute, and Trudy Dotan of Hebrew University are both studying Ekron and the Philistines. Now, Ekron was one of the 5 Philistine cities, and it's one of the ones where they kept the Ark of the Covenant, but they sure were sorry.
Oh, it caused plagues to fall upon them. They thought it was going to make them stronger, but they got plagues, and they sent it back as quick as they could to the Israelites with gifts. But that's the interesting thing about the Philistines. They settled on the coastlands of the land of Israel, and the Jewish people settled in the central highlands of Judea and Samaria. And they were both exposed to each other in their cultures. They were also exposed to the Egyptians, to the Assyrians, to the Babylonians. But the Philistines were assimilated and disappeared. And they reacted differently from the Jewish people who didn't disappear. They're still with us.
Yes. So they went off with the Assyrians and were lost to history.
Lost to history. We asked Dr. Giddens, what happened to the Philistines?
It's a fascinating story because as we excavate layer by layer by layer, we see after 100 or 200 years less of the ethnic markers that would indicate an Aegean origin. So by the year, let's say 1000 BCE, when we know from the biblical story and from other sources, there was a great buildup of power inland, and we call that the United Monarchy. We talk about the period of Saul and David and Solomon. The Philistines lost their geopolitical and economic importance, and we see that recorded in the archaeological record. For instance, at Ekron, this huge site, one of the largest sites in the biblical period, somewhere about 1000 BCE, much of the city is destroyed. And what population is left recedes to a small 10-acre area. The city had been at least 50 acres in size before that. And for about 250 years, the city remained quite small and unimportant.
The book of Judges states, "And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zephath, and utterly destroyed it. Also Judah took Ekron with the coast thereof." Additionally, 1 Samuel declares, "And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines to the gates of Ekron." Although uncertain as to which passage describes the destruction seen in the archaeological finds of Ekron, the Bible plainly accounts for the intermittent Israelite dominion over the Philistines. The Bible also mentions a subsequent invasion of Judah and Israel by a force from the east. The book of 2 Kings asserts, "Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fenced cities of Judah and took them." This occurred in the 8th century BC. Surprisingly, archaeology shows, the domination of Judah was Ekron's delight.
And the Philistine states, which were so productive, they gave a certain leeway. They gave them a certain sense of independence, and they made them vassal states, which means they more or less controlled their own territory. Now, Ekron they chose as the center for the largest olive oil production anywhere indicated or found to date in the ancient Near East.
Olive oil production.
That's right. In the 7th century city. This was a city that was suddenly built up in the Assyrian period. And Ekron went from a small, unimportant city in this medium period that I talked about before, suddenly expanded to about 85 acres. And we have thus far, in excavating about only 4% of the site, and of course surveying all of the top remains, found 115 olive oil installations.
It is believed the Philistines produced some 290,000 gallons of olive oil a year, mostly for export. However, like the oil being pressed from the olives, the Philistine cultural life was being squeezed out as the Aegean immigrants assimilated the traditions of those around them. Seymour and his team uncovered artifacts which communicate this influence. This four-horned incense altar was one of them.
Now, I'm sure you want to know what a four-horned incense altar, which is typical of ancient Israelite religion that we know about from the Bible and we know about from archaeological excavations at Israelite sites, what this is doing at Ekron. It's not found at any other Philistine city in the period. Our theory is that the Philistines survived so long, from about 1200 to 600 BCE, that's about 600 years, because they were very flexible. Whenever a nation confronted them or conquered them, they adapted something of that culture, and they were flexible enough to survive. By the time we come to the great growth period, the zenith of Ekron in the 7th century, it's very hard to find anything left over from their ancestors that have an Aegean motif or an Aegean theme about them.
Egyptian culture was also represented in Ekron's ruins. This magnificent golden cobra, called a uraeus, once adorned the crown of an Egyptian pharaoh. Also unearthed was what Sy believes to be their most important find, a stone inscription from Ekron's temple complex.
And what it says, very briefly, is that this is a beit, a house or a temple, perhaps a shrine, built, bana, by Achish, whom we identify with Ikausu of the Neo-Assyrian texts, who is the son of Padi, who is the son of so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, all of these wonderful names. And then we come across the word Sar, which is the word for king or ruler of Ekron. And this temple was built to a goddess, his goddess, the goddess of Achish or Ikausu, and may there be blessing and long life, etc. Now, why is this inscription so important? Actually, it's the first time an inscription has been found in place, in situ, on an excavation in which the date is not in question. This was found in the Neo-Babylonian destruction of 603 BCE, the destruction caused by the king Nebuchadnezzar. So we have an inscription which is like a signpost. It says, after 13 years of excavation, absolutely, you were excavating Ekron.
Sy, what happened to the Philistines that had this civilization?
In the 7th century, when they had this huge industrial complex, this great city, when they reached the zenith of its growth, all of these factors from other countries impacted so heavily that by the time the Babylonians destroyed the city and physically removed the inhabitants and took them eastward into Babylon, that they no longer had any core culture left to maintain themselves in exile.
So they more or less disappeared from the face of history then.
Well, we don't have any evidence archaeologically or in terms of text that is significant that would indicate that they really continue. It's more or less a people that disappeared, like perhaps the ancient Ammonites or the Moabites or the Edomites, lost in the pages of history.
You know, Scripture talks about what happened to this land along the coast. Zephaniah 2:7, and the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed thereupon. In the houses of Ashkelon shall they lie down in the evening, for the Lord their God shall visit them and turn away their captivity. God gave Ashkelon, a city just north of Gaza, to the Jewish people. And now in Gaza, people who claim they are descended from the Philistines are in the land.
And here it is, the fulfillment of, we're already saying, of Zephaniah's prophecy, that the Jewish people have returned to the land. They're living on the coast where the Philistines used to live. And then there's the Arabs who are living there. They're calling themselves Palestinians, and some of them actually claim to be descendants of the Philistines. But there's no way that could be. As the scholars have found out, the Philistines have disappeared from the face of the earth. They disappeared in Assyria when they were carried off into captivity.
They don't have any descendants.
And no descendants left.
Yeah.
And so the Arabs are descendants of Ishmael, not of the Philistines. So
and furthermore, the Philistines were not even Middle Eastern people.
Not indigenously. That is an amazing thing. They found out that they came from Greece.
Yes.
The Philistines were Grecians who migrated from the Aegean Sea area and settled on the coast of Israel and were the sea peoples. They had a maritime occupation.
Like the Phoenicians, they tended to ship and fish. And so
exactly. And so there's no connection between modern day Palestinian Arabs and the ancient Palestinians who've disappeared, or Philistines who've disappeared from the face of the earth.